I've been a fool, my lord. I was stupid enough to suggest in a previous video that the mighty Pennines of the North might have more to offer than your good self. Please accept my humblest of apologies, sir. I'll remain your humblest of servants. I'll never stray again. Pitstone Hill today. We are just south of the beacon. I don't know if you might be able to see it through the trees. There's the beacon. We'll get a good view of that in a second anyway, once we get to the top of there. We've got a very large section of Grims Ditch to look at today. Now let me just, before we set off, let me quickly show you on the map, because oh I've got a thorn caught around my foot. Right, because to really appreciate the size of the bit we're looking at, I need to show you. Now, where are we? Right, I've got to do this with my left hand, which isn't easy. Okay, we are, let me show you where we've come from. Okay, here's the beacon, here's Dunstable Downs. I live roughly yonder. I've come down past the downs, around the beacon, and up the southern side of the beacon, which is Pitstone Hill. I've pulled over in this car park here, which is nearly at the top, thankfully. Now, can you see the Grims Ditchery? It starts just over this peak behind me. You can see it there. And it comes down around the bottom. And it follows the side of the hillside all the way around. It's a really big section of Grims Ditch. Usually it's much more fragmented than that. I'll admit I was here the other day. I came and had a look with my mum and had a walk. So I know where I'm going. It will be interesting to show you, and it will be interesting to see if we can figure out exactly what the hell Grims Ditch might have been. Well, here we are at the highest bit. There's the old girl over there. We're going that way. Right, now we can see a lot of Grims Ditch from here. That over there, by the way, is Prince's Risborough, very nearly Oxfordshire. Now, I don't know if you can see, I think you probably can, just there. That's the very beginnings of Grims Ditch. And it comes round in a big horseshoe there, can you see that? That section there is a big horseshoe shape. Very, very distinct and very deep. But also at the tip of that horseshoe there, that's where it actually continues down the hillside, which looks kind of accessible, but it's too steep for me. It goes down the hillside and follows along the bottom, where some of it has been destroyed by ploughing. But then just over the crest there, which is where we're going, it comes back up the hillside and continues along this path, which is the Ridgeway. Let's go and have a look. That's better, the wind's died down a tad now. Right, so this little peak that I've just had to climb over from the car park, I would imagine that would very definitely, if there was a settlement up here, that would have been utilised as something defensive at some point. But the Grims Ditch doesn't seem to be focused around that. It seems to be focused around this little, nearly a plateau, this little section here. It's a nice light, isn't it? It's only what, 1 o'clock? No, it's about midday. Right, here we go. This is quite an impressive bit of Grims Ditch. Now it's important to remember that we're sitting on the Ridgeway here. Behind me at the beacon, that's the beginning of the Ridgeway, and it's where the Ridgeway intersects with the Icknield Way. So the two together, they run all the way from the Norfolk coast along this chalk ridge comprising of the Chilterns and although the other downs I don't even know the name of down in the southwest, and it goes all the way down to Aylesbury. And there's all of these historic and ancient religious sites all the way along it. And Grims Ditch is quite a big part of that. It appears along the way, a lot of the way, a lot of people think it's a single structure. I don't personally think it is. I think it's a very common feature which appears on these chalk ridges overlooking the distant vales, but it doesn't necessarily, you just look at them on a map. We'll go into that more later anyway, but I don't think they're a single structure. I think they're just a very common feature. Now look at this. That's quite good. And behind me here, now it disappears. But you've got a very definite little step there, and the ditch continues round here, but then it sort of disappears into the farmland a bit. I suspect what was there has been ploughed out. If there was anything there might not have been. Oh, actually, looking at that, no, it's not too bad, is it? The fence does kind of run along. Let me show you. Fence kind of runs along the side of what's left of what might have been an extra bit of the bank, I'm not sure. Anyway, this one over here is pretty impressive. Now I'm not sure what the official word is on the age of this. Some sources will say Neolithic, some will tell you all the way through to Iron Age. I wouldn't like to comment, and I've not actually seen very much in the way of evidence to prove any of it. I'm sure it's out there, but you certainly can't find it as a layman trundling around on Google. One thing I did read, we're at the northern end of it here, the very northern end of it, and I did read somewhere that there's a section which has been half filled in. Have to walk backwards here because I don't want to film these people. Right, there is a section here up at the northern end which has been filled in with spoil, and there's a little hump next to it. Now apparently that spoil was from either First or Second World War gunning emplacement. What did they call it? A gun pit. They called it a gun pit. They did use this, as they did with a lot of the hills around here during the wars, as a practice ground. Let's have a look, see if we can see this little... Here we go, here's a good spot. Let's see if we can see anything that might look like a gun pit. Wow, it is deep, isn't it? I don't know if the camera's really doing that justice. That's got to be... That's 20 foot deep. It's huge. I can't see a filled in bit. What could be? I don't want to go that way, you see, because that takes me all the way down to the bottom of a very, very steep hill. And then I've got to come all the way back up again, which I don't really want to do. I'd rather just stick to the top of the ridge and catch it at either end. So much for that plan. I couldn't help it. It looked so good down here, look. I'm going to follow it around for a bit. This is one of the... Well, I think this is probably the best bit of Grims Ditch I've ever come across. I mean, I've been to so many round here. Where are we talking? We've been to Blows Downs, Berkhamsted, Great Missenden, Wendover, Ashridge, Potton End. I've been to so many little bits of Grims Ditch. Now, a couple of them were big, impressive, long, straight structures. This one seems to differ quite a lot. This appears to be a circular defence around this little promontory above us, where I think it's actually believed there might be a Neolithic causewayed enclosure, the same very, very rare and very significant Neolithic settlement. I say settlement, I don't know exactly what they were for, as you've got back behind me down there at Maidenbower. And probably part of the same culture and the same society, you know. If indeed it is a causewayed enclosure. I'm not sure they really know that. This is nice down here, isn't it? Right, sorry, I'm waffling a bit, aren't I? Okay. Let's go that way. Continues along there as well, look. Now, I'm not going to follow this all the way down to the bottom of the hill and back up the other side. I'm just going to walk along this bottom bit here because this is where it looks as though that causewayed enclosure might well have been, if that's what it was. There's been a lot of flint digging going on here, isn't there? All of these small lumps and bumps, that's going to be what they're all about. Now, can I get just down here a tiny bit further and then work up the other side of that horseshoe there? No, it's dropping off steeply there. No, alright. I'm going to go up there and I'll catch you in a sec. The ditch isn't quite so pronounced on this side. Certainly not at the top here. Not like it was just over there. But it does sort of gouge itself out as it goes down the hillside and gets deeper. And from... there you go, that's quite clear from there. From there on, it goes down much steeper and along the bottom and back up. But we're going to take the easy route. It's brilliant exploring all these lumps and bumps around here because a lot of it is really uncertain. Depends where you look. You get all sorts of different ages and explanations as to what these things are. And it's not just the earthworks either. It's also this ridgeway that I'm walking on and its neighbouring Icknield Way that takes it to the northeast coast. Well, to the middle east coast. I hope you can hear me over that wind. This ridgeway, people will usually say, oh, it's 5,000 or 6,000 years old. But in fact, it's my firm belief that this was an old migratory route. I've told you this before, but some people might not have heard this. Back at the end of the last ice age, 14,000 years ago, as the half-mile thick sheet of ice started to recede northwards, the herds of, what would it have been? I don't know, mammoths, mastodons, gnu's, all sorts of very big game. They would have used this to come down to the southwest where it's a bit warmer and they're going to find a bit more in the way of grazing. And behind me down there in the vale, trees are in the way. For a long time, when people started using this route, following the migratory herds looking for their food, and it would have been a coming and going thing originally. Initially, they wouldn't have settled here. Maybe they did, but I don't think they did. They'd been coming back and forth each year, following the herds, doing their hunting. And down there in the vale, it was all marshy, completely inaccessible. Which is why, in later days, when people did actually start to come and settle and build structures and leave earthworks behind, that's why they're dotted all the way along this ridgeway, along the top of these hills, because they were still waiting for the waters down there to recede properly before they could go and do any farming. What farming they were able to do in the Neolithic, a lot of it on these hillsides, it was all lynchets, it was terracing. They had to clear a bit of forest and then they had to dig out some terraces, some strips to grow their crops on. Now just a little bit further down we're going to come to some old flint mines. I'll say mines, not really mines, pits, flint pits, open mines, where I'm sure I've read in some of my old 1960s and 1970s local archaeology books, I'm sure I've read that they found Stone Age hand axes at this site. The recent research seems to be suggesting that it's only medieval, which is a bit confusing. Why have they found, you know, Stone Age hand axes at a pit that they're saying is only medieval? We'll get there in a minute. Here's a quick view of, this is Pitstone Quarry. Let me show you and I'll explain a little bit. Right, what you can see down there, that's the old end, that's fallen out of use now. That's filled up with water, and no doubt in the not too distant future that's going to become another nature reserve, just like so many other old out of use pits here. And then over here towards the north, they're clearly still working that side. But I think we've got another nature reserve coming along down there. I suppose this is what you'd consider the summit of Pitstone Hill. Let's have a look. You've got beacon over there. Just down there you can see there's Pitstone Windmill. And then, where's that big stately home? There it is. There's a big stately home over there. I think it's Mentmore Towers. That one there. I think that's the Mentmore estate, which is another one, or at least was at one point in history, another one of the many Rothschild haunts around here. We're not far off now, rejoining Grims Ditch, and it's just about where those contentiously dated flint pits are located. How you doing there, buddy? You don't mind this wind one bit, do you? Well, here we are. This is where Grims Ditch has come back up that really steep hillside, and it now continues along the side of the ridge there. We're going to follow that. I can see all sorts of terracing and old pits. There's all sorts. This is so busy here. And actually, while I think of it, I've got something special lined up for you for the walk back as well. Because this hillside here, overlooking the old out of use side of Pitstone Quarry, that is harbouring something which not many people know about. And I've got bugger all information on it. I just know it's there, and it's pretty spectacular. So we're nearly at the pits now. We'll go and have a look at the pits, and on the way back, I'll tell you what's hiding under here. It's pretty amazing. That's where we're going, those little lumps just there. Now Grims Ditch and the Ridgeway continue off down there into the woods and even further down into the vale before coming back round the back there. Now that's where me and Mum went the other day. I'm not going to do that today. I want to keep this fairly short just because there's so much to look at along the way. But anyway, this is where we're turning around, and here are our flint pits. Now, whether they're Neolithic or medieval or anything in between, I don't know. I've heard all sorts of versions. They've had Roman finds, they've had medieval finds, and I'm absolutely certain that my old books say they had Neolithic finds. But the latest research is suggesting that these actual lumps and bumps we're looking at might be medieval. I don't know. Now, I'd also read in these old books that said that the Neolithic stuff had been found here. Also mentioned that walkers and people who just like to spend a bit of time up here would quite frequently find Neolithic worked flints, or the waste products of Neolithic worked flints. Here we go, look. I don't know what to make of it. I would suggest it's been in use from the Neolithic all the way through to the medieval, to be honest. And it looks just like, it's exactly like the Neolithic pits up on Blows Downs and various other places around here. Now we're not going that way, we're going back the way we came, but down there are actually a couple of very small burial mounds. Quite heavily wooded and quite small burial mounds. You can easily walk past them, to be honest. They're not that impressive to look at. So you've not really missed out there. Right, the sheep have come back now those dogs are gone. I'm just quickly wondering, before I go, if there's a lot of rabbits around here. I'm just wondering if there's any rabbit warrens dug into the old pits, because whilst I'm not prepared to take out my Swiss Army knife and start digging holes looking for worked flint, I don't mind just spending 5 minutes seeing if the rabbits have kicked anything out for me. I'm not actually seeing any. I'm seeing lots of rabbit shit. I'm not seeing any rabbit holes. Here we go, look, there's an exposed face here, although it's not very deep. There's a ton of flint there, but none of it looks particularly broken or worked, does it? They're all just complete nodules. Right, Annie, I'll bring you back a souvenir, young lady. Would you prefer this one? Or do you want that one? That one's a bit more dried out. I know you like to keep them under your pillow, so maybe Mum would approve of that one more. Let me know. Actually, look, there's a whopper. It's all yours, Annie. I can see some terracing or lynchets on that hillside over there. On both the hillsides, there's two with a little comb going through the middle. Look. I can see it going across there. And possibly again at the top there, look. And then the other side of that little comb, there's more of it coming around the side. I wonder how old that might be. You'd have thought I'd have got, you'd have thought the novelty would have worn off by now, wouldn't you? Because I do this all the time, walking along these ancient tracks and just using my imagination and thinking, who was walking along here thousands and thousands of years ago? And where were they going and what were they doing? And who did they know who lived up on the beacon? And where had they just been? Back over further down the ridgeway. I can't help it, it gets me every time. And the other thing is, it must have been damn easy to navigate as well. It's point-to-point navigation, isn't it? If you look back down the ridgeway there, towards the southwest of England, right off there in the distance, you've got Prince's Risborough, one big promontory point, and then the next one, just there, that's Wendover, and then from Wendover, you'd see where we are right now, standing at the top of Pitstone Hill, and then from Pitstone Hill, you follow it off to the beacon, and then actually from the beacon, you can see a hell of a long way. Now then, what was it I discovered once existed on this hillside? Let's just pop over the top. I don't think there's any trace of it whatsoever. It's only from documentary evidence that we know anything about it. Back across Grims Ditch again. Right, just down there on this hillside overlooking Pitstone Quarry, there is documentary evidence. Now I don't know how old this documentary evidence is or where it came from, but there is accepted documentary evidence of a white horse carved into the side of this hill. There's a white cross over there at Prince's Risborough. Back behind me you've got the modern day, albeit modern day, White Lion of Whipsnade Zoo. Much further down the ridgeway you've got the Uffington White Horse, and you've got the Rude Man of Kern with his enormous member glowering down over the town. Here, apparently once upon a time, there was a white horse. Now, I've tried to get more information, but it just doesn't seem to be there. There is one website which has a report from some official body, English Heritage or somebody like that, which contains the documentary evidence, but it's not publicly accessible. So that's all I can tell you, unfortunately. But up here, with all the settlement going on, and the Grims Ditch, and the thousands and thousands of years of living and hunting and farming, it was all marked on the side from a great distance with a white horse. Bet you didn't know that. I didn't until yesterday. Now, I know I've mentioned this before as well. It's just sprung to mind though, walking along this hillside. The village of Pitstone, down there, is named after a thorn tree. The tun in Pitstone isn't the usual derivation meaning town or homestead or farm, you know, and neither does it mean hill like it does in some places. The tun in Pitstone, it means thorn. And the Pits bit is a shortening of the name Pycelle, something like Pycelle. So Pitstone originally meant Pycelle's thorn tree, and as you can see, there's nothing but thorn trees of various descriptions growing along here. It's all hawthorn and blackthorn. Oh, absolutely loads of it everywhere. So it's no surprise that there was some thorn tree down there at some point that was so famous they named the village after it, and its owner, Mr. Pycelle. Nasty stuff this when it's wet. Oh, you see? Christ's sake. Ooh. Should have just stayed on the grass, shouldn't I? You can see that terracing just as clearly there, look. Nearly back now. Oh, reached the final hill. Right, that's good timing actually. The rain's just started again, and I don't like using my camera in the rain. Car's just down there, and I'll be home in 10 minutes. Right, hope you all had a good Christmas and New Year. 2023 is going to be interesting, isn't it? Jesus Christ. See you later. Just in the nick of time.